Welcome to Moments with Marianne. I'm so delighted we're spending this time here today. We have a very inspiring show coming right up with special guest Robert Beeson, and he's here today to share with us his new book, Going Solo: Hope and Healing for the Single Mom or Dad. Now, Robert was one of Christian music's top recording label executives, and he suddenly became a single parent. He felt overwhelmed and alone. He ultimately found support from other single parents and learned that we are stronger together. In 2017, he walked away from a lucrative music industry career in order to use his experiences to create a national platform that supports single parents and help those single families thrive. So let's welcome to the show, Robert Beeson.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
What a pleasure it is to have you here. And my goodness, what a book. Going Solo. I mean, goodness, I'm sure, it's flying off the shelves. I'm sure people are just holding on to this book because it provides so much hope.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I spent 8.5 years as a single dad, and I realized that there weren't a whole lot of resources out there for us single parents to learn how to cope with, the things in life. And so I spent the 8.5 years kind of taking notes and just writing things that I observed, the things that I learned, not everything that I did the right way, a lot of things I did the wrong way that I want to help other people go avoid this path, and because I really wanted to create somewhat of a guidebook to go through this solo season, because what I learned in that season was that not only is it something that, with good practices you can get through and actually survive it and come out on the other side, but it's actually a real opportunity to encounter a depth to life that I hadn't had before. And so I wanted this to kind of be a guidebook. When you go to another country, you want to read something from somebody that's been there, and that's what I'm hoping this is, and I think it's why it's resonating with so many people.
Well, why don't you share your story a little bit with us? Because I know you talk about it in your book, and it's,
yeah.
I think it's good for people to hear, because a lot of times when we think about solo parenting or someone who's a solo parent, most people don't even realize that there are a lot of men that are put in that position.
Yeah, there are, and increasingly so. The statistics about men that have experienced walk-away wives that just kind of leave the scene is actually growing, unfortunately. And my story was, I was a married man. I was in the music industry and had some very fortunate success, and there were problems in our marriage, but we did our best. At least I thought, to try to fix the things that we were dealing with. But at the end of the day, my wife had developed some addictive habits, and at the end of the day, she decided she didn't want to be married anymore. And so literally, she left. One morning, I woke up and came downstairs, and she was gone. There was no note. There was no message. There was, we didn't actually know where she was for a couple of weeks. And so at the time, just 3 months prior to her leaving, I had stepped down from my role as the senior vice president of A&R, which is Artists and Repertoire for Sony. And so I found myself without a job, and now without a wife, but with 3 girls, 9, 7, and 4 at the time. And it was a brand new normal. So it was shocking. And that's the thing about divorce, is even though that there's problems, I kind of compare it to what it must be like to be a woman and be pregnant. You have the sonogram that you can show people, and you can see the signs of life inside your belly, but it doesn't compare to the gravity of the moment that you're holding your child. I think it's the same with divorce, as though even though there's a lot of suspicion and a lot of drama and a lot of problems, when that moment actually comes where there's a new normal, it's very, very a difficult day, a difficult season to face. And I certainly encountered that, because not only are you having to take care of your kids at this point, you're having to try to walk through your own healing process. And so it's a very complicated thing. And with 34% of U.S. homes being single-parent homes, it's the thing that I feel really called to try to help is these single-parent homes. They call them single parents, and I think it's become almost another norm in our society, which is like, your race or gender. There's so many single parents in America, But what we're missing is that it is a really, really difficult season for families to walk through. And that's why I make a distinction between single parent and solo parent. I see single as a status. I see solo as a condition. It's a condition that we walk through, and with the right habits and the right perspective, we can actually find richness. And so that's what it was for me, and I'm hoping that the book helps others not only, survive, but thrive in that season.
And it must have been so incredibly difficult with 3 little girls, especially at those ages, where you're, trying to navigate, like, what do I do with these, with these little girls? Because it's so different, when you're going to work and you come home and you have playtime and stuff. But when you're 24/7 taking care of them, it's a whole different thing.
It is. And, for the next 8.5 years, that their mom was in their lives, like, just very little bit. She had supervised visitation, so it was full time, parenting 3 girls, and it's the best of times and the worst of times. It was incredibly difficult, but the bonds that I have with my daughter now are just like unbreakable. And so in some ways, I'm grateful for the season because it not only transformed me, but it definitely connected my girls and I together in a way that probably wouldn't have been if we hadn't had to walk through that season.
What do you think are some of the things that kind of saved your sanity during that time? Because, I'm sure you're probably overworked, extremely exhausted. You're now covering 2 roles. What were some of the things that kind of just kept you grounded?
Well, there's a few principles, and I write about them extensively in the book, but I will have to say, like, the 2 primary ones that come to mind is the idea of pause. And to me, that looked like meditation. So often as single parents, we have so many balls that we're juggling in the air. And it's inevitable that one gets dropped. And usually the one that gets dropped is the one with me written on it. And so self-care is vital. And what that looked like to me was I was deliberate every day to put myself in what I called timeout. I would just go to make sure the girls were taken care of and watching a video or doing their homework. And I would just say, okay, Dad's putting himself in timeout. I'd go in my room. I would literally lay on the floor, because if I laid on the bed, I'd probably fall asleep. I would lay on the floor, and I would just try to listen to my breathing and calm my spirit down and try to center myself and just breathe and just meditate. And, from a spiritual perspective, I really found connection with God in that time. And I think what happened as a result of quietening my mind and pushing pause on the day, it helped me get a sense of calm, which enabled me to go back out and engage with my girls. If you don't spend time collecting yourself, centering yourself, meditating, whatever you want to call it, but just time out, it's very easy to get swept away with the overwhelming nature of single parenting. And then the other thing was my second kind of principle would be the idea of perspective. To believe, I'm a strong believer that you'll get whatever you look for. So if you're looking for things to be really discouraged about, you're going to find it. If you try to find things to be grateful for and thankful for, you'll find those too. And so I just believed with all my heart, even when it didn't feel like it sometimes, I would choose to believe that there was a bigger story that was being written here, and there was more to everything that was going on in a positive way. And so to try to shift my perspective from what the immediate crisis or the immediate challenge or the immediate job, or responsibility I had to do, get that done, but also realize, like, I'm not stuck here. I'm moving through this season. There's a big picture to all of this. I may not see it, but I've got to trust that there is, and I'm just going to live into that rather than be controlled by the circumstance. And kind of in my book, I call it the difference between the condition that we're in and and the constant that exists, which is that there's a big picture to everything and that everything works together for good. And so I just chose to believe and focus and change my perspective to believe that there was good that was going to come out of this situation and just move towards that.
Something in your book you talked about, which I was a little surprised about, but I could understand once reading it. You talk about, like, how solo parents, they encounter this guilt. And I'd love for you to talk a little bit about that, because I think a lot of times, unless you've walked in those shoes, you really have no idea what that's all about.
it's crazy, being a single parent. You have a lot of time to yourself. When everyone goes to bed, that can be the sometimes the most depressing time because you're all alone. There's no one to bounce ideas off of. And so what you're left with is kind of these voices in your head that, a lot of times you self-analyze and go, what if I would have done this right? And if maybe she would have stayed if I would have just done this. And if I hadn't lived such a indulgent life, maybe she wouldn't have, sought the comfort of drugs. And you could be your own worst enemy because you start plaguing your mind with these guilty feelings and the shame that really can cripple us because then that leads to more depression. And it's just, so getting released from the shame was a big deal to me. I felt really guilty about the way I had been living. From the outside, you couldn't look at my life and say, man, what a disaster of a father and husband. But internally, I had made my career and the roles that I played so much more important than being in the present. And so I really beat myself up a tremendous amount. And it took a while for me to release that and to realize that, I'm using my bandwidth focusing on something that I have no control over. Instead of just learning the lessons that I'm not going to do that again. And so I'm going to continue to look into the future and refuse to get stuck in just kind of beating myself up because you're right. A lot of single parents, there is this side of shame. Let me put it this way. I didn't leave my wife left me. And so you could point the finger and say, see, she just abandoned her family. But I'll tell you, at night, or, sometimes during the day, but those voices would be, yeah, but there's a reason she left you. And so you start kind of pointing the finger back at yourself, and it can be crippling. So it's important to have a healthy understanding of, shame is very different than guilt. I love Brene Brown's, talking about guilt is something that you did. You feel guilt of something you did. Shame is the person that you are. And so shame has no place in our lives. And so you have to keep kind of working towards acknowledging if there's something you did wrong, accept responsibility from it as a lesson to move forward, and don't live in that and think that is who you are as a person.
Such great advice because, we're not perfect. Things happen. Things go wrong. But it's how we, kind of come through these challenges that really define our character and who it is that we are.
That's right, and I would add to that, just the process of divorce itself is one party trying to point out all the faults of the other party, and so there is no shortage of accusations floating around in the courtroom, or just even on, in conversations. And so, a very important thing for a single parent to do is to make sure that there's one or two touch points they can be reminded of who they are. And for me, it was my mom. She was a counselor, but more than that, she just reminded me of the good in me and acknowledged. I took responsibility for the stuff that I did that was not good. But it's important to have a sounding board that you intentionally can go to and say, I'm losing myself here. I'm feeling terrible about this. That can reinforce the good in you. So that is something that is critical for single parents to do, is to find that one person that is safe that can remind you of who you are.
What great advice. Yeah, I was just astounded by the statistics that 1 in 3 U.S. households are parenting alone. I didn't even know that. That's such a high statistic.
Yeah, it is. 34% total, according to the census, are single-parent homes. And, if you step back and go, well, yeah, I guess I can say I know a lot of single parents. What we don't talk about, though, is what is happening from some of these single-parent homes. Some of the largest issues, social and economic issues that we're facing, like suicide and chemical dependency and homelessness, and a majority of those cases in the United States come from single-parent homes. Now, I'm not saying that it's a depressing thing, because we've had 2 of the last 4 presidents that have come from single-parent homes. My point is that this is not a normal situation. This is something we need to pay attention to. And so though I'm speaking to people that are not single parents out there, I promise you, at least 1 or 2 that are in your life. Just don't disregard the fact that they are walking through a very difficult season. And the small things that you could do to help them, mean a tremendous amount. The one thing I can tell you for sure for single parents is we don't like asking for help, because it just magnifies the need that we already feel in our life, and it kind of compounds the shame and the guilt and the embarrassment. So I would just say to those that are not single parents, try to target in one or two single parents you know in your life and do everything you can to help them, whether it's carpool, I'm going to the grocery store, can I pick something up for you? And position it from a position of honor. Like you're saying, I just admire so much what you're doing. Let me come alongside and help you, because I just think you're doing a fantastic job. I don't know if I could do the same thing. And so with what we're doing with our society is trying to not only help single parents, but also mobilize churches and communities and neighbors to reach out and to help this 34% of our U.S. households that really need help.
Well, and what great advice is that? Because when we look also, again, we've got some other alarming statistics when we look at suicide rates among single parents. That's horrible. It's like 63%.
Yeah. 63% of all suicides in the United States come from single-parent homes. That's just staggering to me. Yeah. And it speaks to the fact that, kids aren't two-parent homes are the way kids are supposed to be raised. And, when you take a half of the influence out of that equation, and then you add complexities of joint custody or, just all the complexities of divorce and even, some death, widows and widowers, it's no wonder that some of these statistics exist, because it's not the way we were supposed to be set up as families. And so we as a culture, we as a society need to do more to help these single parents, fill the gap.
Isn't that the truth? You have this chapter in your book titled, I Need a Miracle. And it gives such great resources, but it also has some stories that it talks about. And we won't go into it because we want people to pick up their own copy of Going Solo. But just, you kind of break it down where people can start really thinking about just their life and, the new normal that they're dealing with, and, how to deal with their emotions.
Yeah. It's important that you establish, new practices and new habits, and just to keep moving forward, that this is not a season where you're stuck. This is a season where, even though it's difficult and you need a miracle and you want to see that there's a bigger picture to everything, it can happen, but it does require some inertia. It does require continuing to move forward. And yeah, you're right. We talk about it a lot in the book, but it's an important perspective change.
Well, and, so is there healing at the end of this rainbow for solo parents? Is it possible? Because I think a lot of times, I'm thinking of people that I know that are solo parents. It just feels like they're trudging along and they're, just going from one thing to another. It's not like they really have time to even think about their own personal healing or happiness.
I say in the book, and I really believe this, that you have an opportunity. It's up to you to either you're going to define the season or the season is going to define you. And so if you are deliberate about what you're doing in the season, yes, there is an amazing end to this rainbow. And it starts with a really clear understanding of who you are and your identity and your value, which sets you up for success in so many areas, whether it be relationships or just leadership of your kids as a parent. For me, that's what was transformational. In life, we get so caught up in the roles that we play, author, father, executive, radio host, and it's just those start becoming our identity. When the bottom drops out and everything is stripped away, and you go through a divorce or you lose a parent to death or a spouse to death, the bottom drops out, and all those things that we use to prop up our sense of self-worth and value are taken away. And yes, it's difficult. I wouldn't wish this on anybody, but I would tell you that instead of looking at it for all the loss that it is, and we need to acknowledge it, there's a very real side to what we've lost, but we need to look for the opportunity here to actually establish the things that are really core to us, the things that, really mean the most to us spiritually, in our faith, in our relationships. and who our real friends are, not as a result of something that you do or the way you're perceived to, what you bring to the table, but more about who you are. And that's what happened to me. And I will tell you that I'm now married again, and I've been married for 4 years. And walking into the new relationship, having spent 8.5 years on my own, being a single dad, but being deliberate in the season, has set me up for an amazing relationship. The relationship that I'm in now, my marriage, isn't about trying to fix the damage that was done. The damage that was done by divorce, I had to reconcile and resolve a bunch of those things before I was ready to get into another relationship. And once I did that work, and once I was deliberate about the season, it just absolutely set me up to have a very rich relationship now. And, I'm so grateful for the things that have come together for me. And I know that can happen for so many other people. But it starts with not trying to run from the brokenness that we experience, but actually embracing the brokenness as a path to really understanding peace and joy and all those things that we yearn for in life, but sometimes elude us. So yes, there's absolutely a fantastic end to this story.
Well, I think that is such a great thing to hear, because I feel like not just from reading your book, because I think your book offers a lot of hope that there could be a different life, but from the people that I know, and I've been kind of contemplating this before our time here today, it's just how this affects people in such a way that their happiness is impacted. So for those that don't feel like they have support, I've actually heard you talk about how the church is a place, and we have communities and friends and what have you, but also how the church is a place where people, can get that support. And I'd love for you to expand on that a little bit.
So one of the things that I think is unfortunate is that sometimes churches don't feel like they can embrace divorced people because they'll be perceived as condoning divorce. And I certainly encountered that. I didn't feel like I fit in a church. In fact, I didn't feel like I fit in anywhere. And we have the Solo Parent Society, I've heard a lot of stories, and it's a common one among single parents, is where do I belong? And so what we've done with our nonprofit is created resources for churches and communities to start support groups. It's not teaching and fixing single parents. It's about bringing single parents together so they can process through life together, learn from each other, best practices, helpful habits and stuff. And so the transformation that we've seen has been absolutely remarkable. We started a support group at my church about 18 months ago, and it was at capacity within the first week. And we never mentioned it from the pulpit. But it showed the great need. And so, we've been doing that for a while. We created formats for other people to do that in their churches or in their neighborhoods or communities. And we're now in 13 states with these support groups, and we haven't actually formally advertised it. And so we as a society, we do three things. We provide opportunities for people to build communities. We provide resources with my podcast and ebooks that we put out and that kind of thing. And then we offer relief and support for the real needs that single parents are going through. Because I think the biggest thing is we want single parents to know they belong in our society. They belong we want them to contribute, and we want to feed into them as well. So I think it's just a matter of taking those steps to not just do the tangible needs like mowing someone's yard or picking up groceries, but also what can we do to foster an environment where single parents can come together. And that's what we tried to do with Solo Parent Society, and it's just been amazing to watch that grow.
Well, I think you've done such a phenomenal job with that, because, there is that stigma that, as you were talking about, and I've seen that too, where it's ooh, you've been divorced and you're not quite okay here. But single parents and people who are, going solo, they really have, they really need that community. They need people to be on their side, helping them. Yeah,
exactly. And it's not about let's step in and save the day and fix single parents. It's about letting them know they're loved and they belong, and we're here for them, and they can process at their own speed. And that's what we're trying to. I strongly believe that churches care about single parents. I'm not saying that they don't. I'm just saying I don't think they know how to reach them. And so what we've tried to do is create resources for churches and communities to reach out to these, to these single parents and say, we see you. We want to create an environment where you belong and that your lives can be transformed.
I can imagine you have a waiting list of churches that want you to come and not only present at their church, but to start helping them with the resources that they need so they can set up their own support groups there.
It's that there's no waiting list. We do have a lot. I mean, there's people, but we've spent a lot of time being deliberate about these, building these kits for people to just, they order an introductory kit, they read my book, they read the materials, know what this is about, and then we coach each one through, like, this is how you launch, this is how we launch, this is what what happens, and they're up and running. There's no expertise required. It is so simple, and I think that's the secret sauce is not overthinking this. It's really about bringing people together and letting them process through life together. And so we don't want any kind of barrier step in the way from communities reaching out to single parents. And so while it's growing very, very fast, we are not on a waiting list. Actually, we are able to pull triggers immediately and get kits out to people and it's been crazy watching how fast this is growing.
Oh, that's good to know, because anyone listening to this can get in touch with their church. They can ask that this be implemented where they go, and it's easy for them to get in touch with you. And they do that on your website, right?
Correct. soloparentsociety.com has all the information about what we do. There's a section about groups, the resources that we offer, obviously a place to tax-deductible donations, but it's all the information that you could need or want is on our website, soloparentsociety.com.
Well, one of the things I found very interesting on your website is the book. You have a free ebook on ways to reduce single-parent stress. I think everyone's downloading that if they have, kids or not.
Yeah. Well, we've had a tremendous response to that. We are putting out free ebooks once a quarter. It's called the Single Parent Holiday Thrive Guide, to help single parents know how to get through the holidays. And because it's not only just get through it, but to actually make it a very meaningful season.
Well, that is perfect. I mean, my goodness. Go ahead and download that. And before we go, I'd love for you to share a little bit about your show, because I know you have a show as well, and it's really popular for very good reasons. So why don't you share a little bit of that with us?
So we have a podcast that comes out once a week. It's called the Solo Parent Society Show, and every once or twice a month we have a guest. I interview an expert in the field with things that single parents deal with the most, like co-parenting or stress reduction and that kind of thing. And then on the other weeks we have what's called the Real Quick Show. So we have the interviews once or twice a month, and then all the other ones, there's just these 5-minute sessions, which we've compiled the things that we've learned, the things that we have heard from other experts, and we just give a quick 5-minute show. Because that's the thing, single parents don't have a lot of time. And so we want to be able to make this as accessible as possible. And so on the Real Quick Show, today I think the one has to do with what's wrong with me? I'm missing my ex. And so there's all kinds of, it's so complex, single parent life, that we want to be able to not just dive deep with experts, but also on a weekly basis give just little tips here and there to help us thrive in this season.
Well, you have so much great advice. Robert, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Oh, thank you. It was so wonderful talking to you. I appreciate you making time.
Well, thank you, Robert. It's been such a joy to spend this time with you, and of course to talk about your new book, Going Solo, Hope and Healing for the Single Mom or Dad. Again, Going Solo is available at Amazon and Barnes & Noble. And of course, check out their website, soloparentsociety.com. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I would like to thank everyone for tuning in. You're listening to Moments with Marianne. And remember, make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary. A recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Moments with Marianne airs every Sunday, Monday, Thursday, and Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Pacific Time. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.